Mike Israel's a big fan. Please carry on.
Mike Israel, scratch the back of your head if you can reach it, mate. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ podcast. Do you suffer from shoulder impingement? You got pain at the front of the shoulder. You're struggling to lift your arm above shoulder height. You don't know what to do about it. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about all the little different bits and pieces that could get misdiagnosed. And then what the bloody hell are you going to do about it to get yourself right? Have you ever suffered anything like this before, Joseph?
Yeah, I had plenty of shoulder pain.
Yeah.
For sure. Bunch of different things. I don't know. Yeah, impingement, keen to hear the breakdown. Yeah, I've had AC issues, had like general shoulder bicep tendon
tendon issue.
Yeah, heaps. I think it's so common in jits.
It is very common. And let's get into where it can go wrong. So this was something that came to us from the community, our Facebook community, saying, hey, I've been diagnosed with shoulder impingement by a doctor, but they hadn't had an MRI. They hadn't, this just the doctor goes, oh, you got shoulder impingement. But it's not necessarily that simple. The shoulder is very complicated joint, not a true joint. It's just a bone that's hanging there. So we've got to kind of get into why have you necessarily got this pain at the front of the shoulder and understanding what it might be. So first cab off the rank is actually tendinitis. So I'm not saying, oh, you have tendinitis, but if you haven't been to see your physio and you haven't really had it properly assessed in that way, you've just been told something by a doctor, you probably need to take the next step to actually go to the physio and get it checked out. Because I've had this where I actually was fighting a Kimura and I kind of got out of it, and I was in a triangle actually. I was getting triangled, and I'm like, I'm not going to tap to this triangle. And then I got Kimura'd, and I was like, oh, it feels like my shoulder's going to pop. And then I came back and I got triangled. But as a result, totally didn't get Kimura'd. But as a result of that, I had weakness and soreness. And what part of that was I had a small amount of tearing to my rotator cuff, but I had strained the tendons that connect the rotator cuff through the front of the shoulder. And this gave me residual soreness that even when my rotator cuff was good, I had this pain at the front of my shoulder. And this is because I was in this forward posture and basically the tendons were rubbing and straining. And also I needed to strengthen my rotator cuff. So tendinitis is inflammation of the rotator cuff tendons. And so if this hasn't been, picked up on, that may be causing you pain at the front of the shoulder, which oftentimes when we think about pain at the front of the shoulder, we just think here. But your rotator cuff, even though it's back here, the tendons come through and innervate through to the front of the arm bone here, your humerus.
So just to clarify, we're talking about impingement, which is typically pain felt at the front.
It is, but I guess what I'm doing here is I'm going through two other things which might be causing the shoulder pain before we get to the impingement piece.
Right, but the location of the pain we're saying is some shit at the front where you're like...
Exactly. And the difficulty is there's lots of different reasons why you might have pain there. And it's not necessarily obvious if you haven't then gone and seen your physio. And we are recommending go see a physio and get it checked out so you know what's up. Because just talking to the doctor isn't necessarily the best way to know.
Yeah, and so for the uninitiated, doctors like the general practitioner, as we call them here in Australia.
We do.
Medical doctors, physicians in the States maybe.
Sure, maybe.
They're like really good at like general diagnosis of things, but they're not specialists, right? They're a generalist. And so in our experience, when it comes to joint issues like biomechanical issues, you might be lucky and get a doctor that has a well-rounded view of things, and they can probably give you a good idea of what's up. But you often get bad information from them. They'll be like, "Oh, it's this."
Yeah. And do you want a cortisone injection?
Yeah, and they could be right, but it's kind of like it's low quality data at best. So that's why I recommend to always go to the specialist, the physiotherapist or the whatever the relevant kind of specialist is in your part of the world, because they're the people that work with bodies and they look at biomechanics and that's their whole shit.
Yeah, for the best part, and this is not throwing shade on general practitioners and doctors.
No.
They deal with disease. They deal with illness.
They deal with everything.
Yeah,
they've got everyone from your neighborhood coming in going, this is my problem.
Yeah,
and they're expected to go, cool, this for you, that for you, that for you, that's fucked. Take this, out of here.
It's a tough job. It's a tough job. But then there's another thing that can come up which can cause shoulder pain when you're trying to lift your arm, which is bursitis, because you've got this little fluid sac that sits under your AC, the little bone over the top, which means everything can kind of move in a fluid way. If it is inflamed, this can cause you pain when you lift your arm. And so if you haven't had that checked, you don't necessarily know. And for any of you out there who've had bursitis and then, you've been able to overcome it, it's a huge relief. So, my brother-in-law had it, and he had to have a cortisone injection. And once he had that, the relief was massive.
Right.
And as soon as that settled down, the range of motion was restored.
Yeah.
But if you haven't had a scan or you don't know, it's difficult to be able to actually understand what is causing this shoulder problem. So the reason why I wanted to say this first is if you haven't had your check and you don't know if it's tendinitis or bursitis, you need to get that check first before you do any of these next steps, which we're going to talk about.
Yeah. And to that point, you don't always have to have a scan, do you? Like scan can be a really good way to get a super good view of what's happening.
Yes.
But a good physio oftentimes will be able to test you manually.
Do a bit of a stress test and how's your external rotation, push here, push there. And they usually got like a detective's eye that they can go, okay, it's not this, it's not that. This is probably what it is.
Yeah. Now, just as a thing, we mentioned the thing about doctors, you can also get different opinions from different specialists,
of course,
right? And that's something that you need to take into account in this whole process.
Sorry, doctor, did you say the answer is steroids? I'm pretty sure I need steroids injected straight into my shoulder.
It's funny, I've been thinking about TRT for the last 15, 20 years.
That's not your opinion, all right? I'm going to need a fourth medical opinion. The answer is growth hormone. Ladies and gentlemen, do you suffer from sore and swollen knuckles after a hard class of Jiu Jitsu? I have the answer for you, the Fingertine, custom designed by our friend, the Grip Physio. Now, these wraps are specific for your fingers. Wrap them around, work them through, and reduce the swelling so you can recover faster and be back on the mats in no time. You can get 20% off when you use the code Bulletproof20 at checkout. Go to thegripphysio.com. But let's say that you do have shoulder impingement. Let's break that down. So basically what it means is you had a reduction in the space between the humeral head, your humerus, your upper arm bone, and the AC. And what's happening is when you go to lift your arm...
AC is a joint up here, and then that's the bone we're talking about.
Yeah.
So where those two connect...
You jam up. So when you do go to lift your arm overhead, you're like, oh, God, that hurts. That doesn't feel right. Yeah, and so essentially the metaphor I like to use is if you think about a wheel and its axis, if you've got the axis off center and the wheel tries to turn, it jams every time. And so that's what you're getting. This reduction in space with the acromion process, AC. So sciencey. I've written it down, Joe. I've got the facts right here.
Indisputable.
And the rotator cuff tendons basically rub, and this can result in pain through the front.
How many listeners do you think eyes are glazing over right now?
Well, no, I want to bring this up because this is some shit that you deal with and you don't know. You're like, I just got this shoulder pain, bro. Look, what do I do?
Like, don't throw the encyclopedia at me. Tell me what I need to do.
Just bench. No, don't bench. So what can we do to create more space? So here's the problem. The space is lacking, and that means you can't move your arm the way you want.
So then every time you kind of gunk it,
Yeah.
It's irritating the thing, right? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, the tendons are rubbing.
Right,
and
so it's like
jamming.
this constant kind of where you're just reinforcing the pain all the time.
Yes, and doing jiu-jitsu, even though in the moment, we all know this, when you're warm, the body's like on fire, adrenaline's pumping, you're rolling, you feel good.
Yeah.
That adrenaline comes off, you ain't feeling good.
2 a.m., you realize you don't feel good.
You can't lie. See, here's funny. You don't really realize how disabled you're making yourself until you're like, I can't put my shirt on.
Yeah.
I can't put my seatbelt. Like I can't lie on my shoulder.
Yeah. Or you try to like reach back in the car to like, I don't know, smack your kid or some shit, and you're like,
yeah,
off the hook.
You got to turn to spoon your missus, and then you can't lie on that shoulder, and then now you've got to be the little spoon.
Yeah,
you little bitch. I mean, everyone. Wow.
I don't
That's not
smack
so
my
bad.
kid. That was a joke. But yeah, door handle, like it's always the little benign things that you're like, oh, it's not rolling in
nothing
class.
huge,
Like that's
no.
fine. It's the little shit. And you're like, I'm actually crippled day to day here.
We got to sort this out. So let's sort it out. We need to make space. And how do we do that? First step is we've got to loosen up through the pecs and we've got to loosen up through the lats. So for those of you out there, internal rotation is what can generally lead to having this really jammed up space at the front, impingement. And Jiu Jitsu also reinforces this posture, whether you're playing guard or you're passing or you stand up wrestling, like you've got to stay tight. This internally rotated shoulder position is not great. And so by loosening up through...
Well, it's not great to be stuck in full time.
Yeah, you don't want to be there residually,
Yeah.
all the time. And so we need to spend some time opening up through the pec muscles and also the lats. And this is something that really it's probably only in the last 10 years that it was really reinforced to me, because I always thought, you need to have the strongest, biggest lats for jiu-jitsu. Sure, you do need strong lats, but you also need strong scaps, which is more the shoulder blades pulling back, the retraction piece. So having really tight lats and really tight pecs pulls you into the shitty posture and this shoulder kind of dysfunction of sorts. And so my two favorite drills for loosening up through here, the first one is a side-lying rotation. It's one of the stretches we use for opening up through pecs. And then also I like me a hang, just a simple hang, supinated grip. A lot of people don't necessarily think about this, but when you turn your palms towards you, this actually puts your arm into its most natural position, and that lets you stretch out. Do you have any particular stretches that you love for the pecs and the lats, Joe?
For pecs, I think I prefer scorpion as most. Yeah, whether it's on the floor or standing, I think it just hits, for me, it just hits pec real direct.
Yep.
And then, hang, side hang cobra would be like the turbocharged version of
number one, yeah.
Yeah, but any form of hang, great for the lats. Just for folks who aren't following the anatomy, pecs is the muscles on the front, chest, and then lats are the big back muscles kind of here on the back side of your armpit.
Yeah.
Hopefully they're big. If you grapple a lot, they're probably going to be pretty chunky. And if you reach back, you can grab a handful of it. But these are two big muscles that really influence your shoulder function a lot.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not to say we don't want them to be big and strong, but we don't want them to be residually tight. This is the thing we're looking at. And then the next piece on that is thoracic extension. Now, your thoracic is just your back, your upper spine from your mid-back before we hit the neck. And for a lot of us, we tend to be a little bit hunched. So you got to spend a little bit of time stretching out to that bad boy. And I know when I get tired, I get a bit lazy with my posture.
Yeah.
I tend to just slump.
Doing it right now.
I'm not even thinking about it. And the thing for me, it doesn't matter if you've got a foam roller, the arm on the edge of your couch, if you've got a nice soft arm on the couch.
Weight bench, like at the gym.
Yeah, weight bench, even the edge of your bed. You lie along it and you lie back and you open up through the chest and shoulders and just spend, 30 seconds, a minute there opening up. Sometimes you feel a little crack in the upper back.
So satisfying.
Oh, it's a good vibe.
My favorite way to stretch the thoracic, like to get a bit of thoracic extension in my warm-ups, is I do a passive hang.
Okay.
And then I tuck my knees into my chest as hard as I can.
Oh.
Have you done that?
No.
Because when you tuck the knees, it changes your center of mass and it pulls your shoulders forward. So because you basically create this big weight here and it just hangs you into this little pop.
Oh.
Yeah, super nice. It's kind of taxing, like you don't want to hold it for long then.
It sounds tough.
But yeah, it's really nice.
Awesome. Today's episode was brought to you by Parry Athletics. They are our preferred apparel sponsor. They've been sponsoring the show for some time now, and they do the best gear in the game. They do the best training shorts for the gym or on the mats, and they always have awesome designs for all of their custom rash guards. Now, if you would like to get yourself some Parry Athletics gear, we can get you 20% off when you use the code Bulletproof20. That's right, folks. You get 20% off when you use the code Bulletproof20. Get some. Well, the reason why I wanted to bring up this thoracic extension piece is because a lot of times people might do the pec stretch, they might do the lat stretch. That's all good. The next thing on that is they go, okay, I'll just do shoulder pressing now. If you still have this kind of kyphotic posture, this hunched posture, you're still going to get this jamming, even if you can get your arm a bit higher. So that's why I feel that that's probably the thing that we neglect the most in jiu-jitsu. We don't think about it. Whereas people in health and fitness world, gym world, they do thoracic extension shit all the time.
Yeah, like when we, probably for folks listening, when you think about the shoulder, it's kind of easy to just think about like this part, like this shoulder specifically, joint. But actually we're talking about like this whole sort of upper quadrant of your torso. And that's, of course, your shoulder, but your scapula's in there, your thoracic's in there. Like it's a huge piece of your body.
It's a complicated beast.
Yeah, and so like you want to sort of address it on that whole shit, to put it technically.
Yeah, we're just keeping it as tech as possible here. Now, what do you do once you've created a bit of space there?
Can we make big rhomboids and shit? Is that what we're talking about?
I think
big lower traps?
We can, but even before we go to that piece, we've got to improve stability below the shoulder. Because for some of you out there, you might think, oh, but I can do jiu-jitsu and, you know, like I can do like a bunch of shitty push-ups and I'm good, you know? Nah, not necessarily. So the three most simple things that I feel you can do to help you improve your shoulder stability below the shoulder before you go overhead is, number one is a scap push-up. Just to get the rhomboids working, get shoulder blades working. And it's just one of those things that's deceptively hard. You say to people, do a scap push-up, and they automatically bend their elbows. So what we're talking about here is just you being able to like protract and retract through the shoulder blade.
Keeping the elbows locked.
Yeah, just in a push-up position, and that can be challenging for people.
Yeah, it's I think it's a great drill for teaching people how to isolate the scapula, which is, for folks, that's your shoulder blade, your scapula. That is what's under attack when you're getting kimura or figure four generally. It is a big piece of your anatomy, but most people don't understand how to move it independently of other things.
Sure.
And the scap push-up really challenges that, doesn't it? You realize I'm super uncoordinated with this.
Yeah, and it can be a bit sticky.
Yeah.
Because if you've got a winging scapula, which basically means your rhomboids are weak as shit, and your shoulder blades are hanging out like this, for you to try and depress them and retract them it's awkward.
Some physio told me I had winging scapula once.
How dare they?
Look at me now.
Look at me now.
Look at me, Bass.
Try and Kimura me, bro. You're going to get flipped out, boy. So the second drill I also recommend is the tabletop press.
Very nice.
Because it's so good because you do have to retract the shoulder blades for opening up through the front of the shoulder, biceps, pecs, the whole piece through the front. It's actually, for me, I find it is one of the simplest ways to get the front opened up and the back switched on.
Yeah.
And then the third one is actually a not very well known thing, but a great thing, is the kettlebell armbar drill.
I think we did an ep on this some time ago, didn't we?
We might have mentioned it, but essentially you're lying on your back and you don't have to use a kettlebell. You can use a dumbbell, use a weight plate. I generally recommend you don't do this heavy. Start pretty light. You're just lying on your back with your arm directly up towards the ceiling. And then you're going to turn away. Say you're holding the weight in your right hand. You're going to turn away to the left and roll your right knee over and try and go belly down while stabilizing your arm in that vertical position.
Keeping that shit pressed overhead.
Yeah.
Or
and
to the ceiling.
Towards the ceiling. And then just turn over as far as you can manage while stabilizing and then turn back. And each time you're trying to turn a little bit further. And what's great about this is it gets your shoulder loaded up and stable through the front and the back while trying to create this rotation.
Yeah.
And by no means this is not a defense to an armbar.
I'm pretty sure Mike Israetel would disagree with that drill. Please carry on.
I'm pretty sure Mike Israetel would disagree with plenty of things I say. And I say, Mike, let's have a roll. Shut the fuck up. But what I'm trying to do is think about how can we solve your problem. So just by doing these three drills, it is quite simple for you to be able to start getting your shoulder more stable. Then once you're able to do these without pain, feeling good, and you can now, I can lift my arm up overhead with no pain, we can now get the shoulder strong and stable.
Giddy up.
How the fuck we're going to do that. So first things first, I want to talk about an active hang as the first thing to get I would say it's more advanced than a scap push-up because you're holding your whole body weight and being able to actually pull the scaps back and draw that all down, which is really the first piece of the puzzle for the pull-up, is a powerful move. I know that actually when we first started filming our content for when we had our website back in the days, throwback.
Shout out to the old website users.
Yeah.
Love you guys.
Joe was coming through and being like, bro, you got to pull down more. He's like, you were like, I was like, I think I was demonstrating a pull-up or maybe it was chest to bar. And you're like, no, dude, just get these down a bit. Like, draw it down. I'm like, I am. Stop touching me. I'm doing just fine. Leave me alone. And it's actually in the perfect pull-up video, isn't it? You're talking about getting the scap set from that hanging position.
Yeah. Most people overlook it because they think of the pull-up just as like an arm exercise and sort of neglect the whole back piece. But the initiation should be like, well, your active hang, right? It's you start in a passive hang and then you pull the shoulder blade down. So it depresses and then you go back up. And so that would be the first part of your pull-up movement.
Yeah.
And then the second phase, as you start to arch back, would be the retraction. Yeah, so they're pulling back and down.
Yeah. And so we're not going straight to the pull-up here. We're just talking about that retraction piece, which is super key.
Do you find you get thirsty at training? I do. I do all the time. I'm a sweaty human and I need to hydrate. Now, the biggest problem is by the time you're thirsty, it's a little bit late. You need to hydrate. And that's why we got Sodi. Sodi is sponsoring the show. We've got all the colors of the rainbow. Great flavors here. We've got salty citrus, salty pineapple, salty berry, and my favorite, salty grapefruit. And they will be releasing 2 new mystery flavors soon. So why do we need this? It's going to prevent our muscle cramps. It's going to help our energy delivery. And it's also going to mean you're less tired, which is an advantage when you're training. If you want to maximize your jiu-jitsu and feel good when you're rolling, you need to get Sodi. And when you purchase, enter the code Bulletproof20 at checkout for 20% off.
Oh, yeah. The next move, number 2, I put in there, is actually an overhead carry. So even if you're still struggling with pressing, we want your shoulder blade and the back of the shoulder to become stable in the overhead position. So provided you don't have pain, and that's the kind of rule number 1, holding a weight that you can keep, you can sustain the position for 30 seconds to a minute, having that in the overhead position and walking up and down for 30 seconds to a minute is an awesome way to stabilize the shoulder. Now, I used to do this like Efim, my old Russian trainer, used to just kick our ass. I think he used to just try and fuck us up. He'd be like, all right, now you're exhausted. You've worked out for 90 minutes. Let's just do a bunch of carries and see how messed up you can get. But if we can step sideways to Eric Cressy, who's known as the shoulder guy, he actually does a lot of overhead carries to help improve shoulder rehab for baseball players. So it was kind of interesting. I was like, Fim, he's just messing us up. But then when I was looking at other strength coaches who are using it in a rehab kind of situation, the overhead carry, I feel, is very underrated for shoulder stability. Yeah,
it's not something, I don't fuck with it a lot, but it is a goodie. A few times I've done it, I'm like, ooh, you feel it.
Yeah. And then
Mike Israel's a big fan. Please carry on.
Mike Israel, scratch the back of your head if you can reach it, mate. I'm
trying to come in under the radar, and then you're just like,
no,
you, bro.
Sledgehammer.
I will beat you in a fight.
Bro, I'm just sick of it. Like, muscles in your skull is not going to save you. I don't care what you say. Third and final piece is the Turkish Getup. This is my...
Oh, God.
No. Come on, stay with me, Joe. Stay with me. The reason why I love it is it does work your shoulder front, back, side, like almost through a full range of motion in terms of stability. Regardless of what you think about what the Turkish Getup might do for other facets of athleticism, it is a fantastic shoulder stability exercise. You can do it light, it's going to benefit you. You can do it heavy, it's going to benefit you.
Yeah.
So that's not really under debate. Even critics of the Turkish Getup, including Mike Israel, would say it is good for shoulder stability.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And it doesn't actually require you to press. A lot of people, whether you're using dumbbells, kettlebells, anything, when they load up the weight at the front here, typically, that's when they're getting pain at the front of the shoulder.
Yeah.
What is great about the kettlebell is even though you roll it to the front, you use your other hand to help you kind of press it up and stabilize, you're not actively pressing to the overhead position.
Yeah.
You're rearranging your body around it, and then you end up in an overhead position through the movement.
Yeah.
And this is just a great way for you to start to stabilize overhead so that you haven't got that shoulder pain anymore.
I like that.
That's really what we're looking at. So 3-step process there. First of all, make some space.
Yep.
Get that space there, stretching out through the front and like the pecs, the lats, etc., the thoracic. Step 2, you want to improve stability below the shoulder. We've got our scat push-up, tabletop press, and the kettlebell armbar drill.
Very nice. Yep.
And step 3 is get that mother stable overhead. And that's really where I think it's neglected, because almost the first thing people do is they're like, oh, I just do shoulder press now. And I'd actually say before you start overhead pressing, active hang, and then some walking with arm overhead, and then Turkish Getup. And by approaching it in this way, your shoulder's actually going to get a lot stronger, and you actually haven't done any overhead pressing. Then you'll be ready to go, and you'll be feeling a lot better.
Now, one question from me: do you think that is rowing work necessarily part of this, or because rowing work mechanically is like it's always kind of like you never feel. Even if you got a bad shoulder, you can pretty much always row, can't you?
You definitely can. And I think rowing can be. The reason why I haven't factored it in is I feel that for most BJJ folks, they're already doing a bunch of that. So if you're still going to Jiu Jitsu, which I expect you probably would be, being the tough or harder folks that you are, this is something you might already be doing a lot of. So if you've already got a bit of anterior shoulder pain, just to factor in that you're probably doing a bit of it already, and until you're kind of not pain-free, but you've restored your function, I'm not against it, but it's not something that I'm
not a priority.
Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Gotcha.
There it is, folks. So I think, what do you think, Joey? We could do an exercise video around this bad boy?
No, I think the guys have got it. They're good.
They'll work it out.
It's like 27 exercises in there. You guys know the ones we mean, right? Shit.
Yes, that's right. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll do a video, and God, I mean, is JT going to link it in the show notes? That's the big question.
Is Jack going to link it
He's
in
definitely
the show
going to say that he is. Yes, 100%. It's already linked.
It's already there, folks. What are you talking about? Click below. All right, that's what it is. Peace.